SpongeGex here, and I just spent the past 2 days playing the game Disney Epic Mickey Rebrushed for Nintendo Switch. Now, to get my thoughts on the first game out of the way, I loved it more for its concept and novelty more than the actual gameplay. The story was fun, and the idea behind the gameplay was really cool. The game is about Mickey sneaking into Yensid's tower by going through his mirror, paying homage to the classic short Through the Mirror and The Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia. Mickey begins messing around with a magic paintbrush over a land Yensid made for forgotten Disney characters. However, Mickey accidentally unleashes an ink monster called the Blot, along with accidentally dumping a huge bottle of paint thinner onto the land. Years pass, and Mickey's past comes back to haunt him as the Blot hunts Mickey down and drags him into the ruins of the land that Yensid created, now a dark mirror of Disneyland called the Wasteland. Mickey wakes up restrained by the Mad Doctor from the classic Mickey short of the same name. The Doctor tries yanking Mickey's heart out, but Mickey manages to escape, as Mickey is assisted by a gremlin named Gus, based on the main character of a scrap Disney movie called Gremlins, based on a book by Roald Dahl. Mickey acquires the magic brush that was used to create this land, as he can shoot paint or thinner out of it to restore the land or destroy it further. The game involves a lot of puzzle solving or combat that requires either paint or thinner to particularly solve certain problems, or even give players the option to choose an optional path, which may lead to in-game consequences. Either way, the game does lead to the same ending, but with minor alterations that show the fates of certain characters depending on whether you helped them or neglected them. So Mickey travels across many distorted copies of lands based on Disneyland areas, along with adventuring through 2D retro-inspired levels inside magic film projectors. They have Mickey exploring recreations of lands from past short films, including a few surprises later on in the game. Mickey learns that Wasteland is ruled by Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, who in real life was the original Mickey Mouse until Walt Disney lost the rights to the character, which led to Mickey Mouse's creation. Mickey not only realizes that Oswald fell into obscurity because of his rise to fame, but he feels more guilty upon realizing the Wasteland is in ruins because of the paint and thinner accident he caused nearly 90 years ago. After exploring through a giant junkyard of real-life Mickey Mouse merchandise, Mickey finally comes face to face with Oswald, and Oswald hates Mickey's guts, but reluctantly decides to team up with him so they can gather parts to build a rocket and get back into the real world. However, getting into the real world requires a heart, which was why the Mad Doctor was trying to take it from Mickey in the first place. After exploring many parts of the worlds and getting all the parts, Mickey meets back up with Oswald at Mickey Junk Mountain, as Mickey finds out that Oswald was able to trap the Blot inside a giant bottle. But all the ink monsters they fought throughout the game were just overflowing drops of the Blot oozing out of the bottle. Just when Oswald finally begins to trust Mickey, Mickey is filled with guilt and confesses that he's the one responsible for the thinner disaster, along with the Blot's creation. This revelation makes Oswald so angry that he jumps on the bottle and starts angrily stomping, accidentally unleashing the Blot in his entirety. The Blot grabs Oswald and Gus and threatens to kill them unless Mickey surrenders his heart, which Mickey ends up doing. The Blot uses his tentacles to stretch across all of Wasteland to suck out all the paint from within those worlds, as Mickey adventures back to each world to destroy the tentacles. After they've all been taken care of, Mickey and Oswald team up once again to destroy the Blot. They go to Tomorrowland to take the rocket up to Sleeping Beauty Castle, where the Blot remains. As Mickey towers up the collapsing Dark Castle, Oswald is setting up fireworks for Mickey to use against the Blot. So Mickey finally meets up with Oswald and is saddened to find out that Oswald's girlfriend Hortensia was being trapped inside stone, thanks to the Blot. The Blot suddenly absorbs Oswald into his body, as Mickey dives in to save him, while destroying the Blot from the inside by destroying his weak points. With the Blot weakened, Mickey's heart is finally freed, but Oswald grabs it, and in a very suspenseful scene, we see Oswald struggle with wanting to keep it for himself so he can be remembered again, but he realizes it would be the wrong thing to do, so he does the right thing and gives it back to Mickey, as he fires off the fireworks to destroy the Blot and send Mickey back home. As Mickey returns to the surface, Yensid is upset with Mickey, but he looks down at the world that he created and noticed a lot of magical things happening, like the world's being restored to its beauty, along with Hortensia being restored and reuniting with Oswald. The game ends with Mickey being forced to go back through his mirror. As Mickey turns around to look back at his mirror, Yensid uses his powers to give Mickey a peek at what happened to the other characters, and he allows Mickey to say goodbye to Oswald. So, of course, this wasn't the last we would see of these two characters, for there was a sequel where Mickey is summoned back in the Wasteland to assist Oswald in working with the Mad Doctor to try and stop massive earthquakes that are threatening the Wasteland. The game was overall very interesting, but there were a number of things that held it back for me. For one, so talking about the original game in general for Wii, the frame rate was terrible. The game lagged whenever Mickey jumped or attacked. The controls were awful, requiring the Wii Remote and nunchuck, and you had to shake the nunchuck in order for Mickey to use his attack every time. The aiming for paint and thinner controls were actually pretty decent, though, but there was a really bad camera, and you had to control it using the D-pad. It was very uncomfortable. Mickey's jumping was terribly short. He just could not get enough height or distance with his jumps, and that really bothered me. He also had really bad jumping collision, where when trying to jump on certain platforms, he would slide off them or bounce off them, and yeah, the platforming was a mess in that game. The game did not have the best hint system or sense of direction, and considering how the game requires a lot of backtracking and fetch quests throughout, it sucked how there wasn't any way of quick traveling through these locations. And people said Banjo-Tooie and Donkey Kong 64 were overkill. At least they gave you ways to quick travel. There are a lot of collectibles that do absolutely nothing in this game, mostly being pins based on the collectible pins at Disney parks, along with these bronze, silver, and gold Mickey pins that do absolutely nothing. It's like, don't bother seeking them out. They give you no reward in return. Your main collectibles are colored tickets that you can use as currency for buying concept art and a few upgrades, but nothing too exciting. You also need to find these power sparks that are needed to open projectors leading to new levels. You think these items would be like plentiful, because they're kind of like, you know, the stars from Mario 64 or the Jiggies from Banjo-Kazooie, but they don't have really any story significance, and they're not scattered throughout the entire world. So it just happens to be a collectible that you find on the side, and you do need them to progress, but it's not like really a main focus. There really isn't like a main collectible you have to get, like, there's not like one definitive collectible that you need to progress. There's a bunch of collectibles you need, but there's a lot that are pretty useless as well. So there's also a few abilities that you unlock in the game called sketches, including a TV used to distract enemies and power up certain pads, a stopwatch that freezes time to freeze obstacles and extend time-limited switches, and anvils for activating switches that require pressure. However, these sketches are very underutilized. You only need to use them for a few short puzzles, and they're pretty useless in combat. It's like you really don't need any help when it comes to combat. You can easily just take them out with paint or thinner. There are these little things you can get called guardians, where after you've either used enough paint or thinner on certain objects, you can either get a good guardian or a bad guardian. And so the bad guardians are like these green orbs, and they basically act as thinner, where you can press the R button to fire one of them at an enemy, and it will do a lot of damage to them. Or you can use the good ones, which are blue, and you can use those to fill in paint on certain enemies to befriend them. And so you can only hold up to 3 guardians at a time, and you can only hold one color at a time. So you can't have like 1 green and 2 blue or any other way. You can either have 1 to 3 green or 1 to 3 blue at a time. The game also did not have very good replay value. For when you beat the final boss, it forces you to start a new game. So if you want to keep on playing and revisiting levels you've already completed, tough luck, you gotta start all over. Luckily, Epic Mickey 2 did fix this. After you beat the game, there is a little bit of post-game content where the characters acknowledge that you've saved the world and you're free to backtrack to most levels. So that was a nice addition. I kind of wish they could have done that for the first. So this remaster, on the other hand, does improve some of these issues. Unfortunately, not all of them. Now, this is all going to be based on what I played on the Switch version. So maybe it does perform a lot better on PS5 or Xbox Series consoles, but just judging by the Switch version on its own. The frame rate is overall an improvement over the Wii Classic, but there are a few times where the game lags horribly, but not as frequent as the original. However, the loading times, on the other hand, they are horrible in the remaster compared to the original. Sometimes it takes 1 to 2 minutes to load, and considering how there's a lot of backtracking in the game with a lot of loading screens in between, expect a lot of loading screens. The controls are overall a very huge improvement. I played using a third-party Pro controller and used both gyro aiming and right stick aiming. I mostly relied on the right analog stick to aim Mickey's paintbrush left and right, but occasionally used the gyro to adjust up and down. This felt so much comfier than the uncomfortable combo of the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. You no longer have to swing the controller in order for Mickey to do a spin attack. You can just press, I think it was the X button. So the controls are very similar in comparison to the Switch port of Mario Galaxy versus like the Wii port, where they added regular controller support with gyro tilting. And so yeah, it's really nice translation from one console to another. The camera controls are also a huge improvement. No longer requiring to use the D-pad like on the Wii Remote, you can now use it on the right analog stick, and so not only is it easier to control, but it looks a lot better and moves a lot better. It's not as jerky or wonky as it was on the Wii. Mickey's platforming is also hugely improved as well. He jumps a lot higher now, fixing all my complaints about his jumping controls and range from the original. And he has pretty good collision when it comes to landing on platforms. He doesn't like bounce or slide off them anymore. In fact, his jumping is so good in this game, it's almost broken with the kinds of shortcuts you can now take with how high his jumps are. I'm not complaining though. Most of the complaints I had over the first game, though, are unfortunately still here. The game has a terrible hint system. It doesn't have a very good sense of direction either on where to find items needed for quests. It makes me so thankful for maps and item radars and beacons that are used in modern video games to prevent players from getting lost and running around in circles for nearly an hour. So moments like that happen to me quite a bit in worlds like Adventureland and Tomorrowland. There's still no quick travel options, although you can talk to Gus in front of the projectors and pay him 10 tickets in advance to skip the side-scrolling segues put between levels. I'm honestly not sure if that was an option in the original game. I never bothered talking to Gus. I didn't even know you could talk to Gus, because, you know, usually in a game they should let you know about that kind of stuff instead of expecting players to figure that out. The game still requires you to start the whole game over upon completion. But it does have a new feature that you can find, so not only is there a New Game Plus mode, which allows you to transfer over non-story related items like the tickets and pins, but there's also a new feature that allows us to revisit the projector levels in the main menu. Just click on an option called Cinema, and it lets you select a save file as it warps you to the movie theater in Mean Street, and it lets you re-explore all the projector levels that you've completed. That's a nice bonus. If only it had a chapter select or boss replay mode for the actual levels in the game, that would have been really cool. Other additions to the game include a running function, so Mickey can run a lot faster with the press of the left analog stick. That is a great addition, because I always thought Mickey moved kind of slow in the original game, so it's nice to have a little function where he can run a little faster now. Mickey now has a ground pound attack, which can be done by double jumping and pressing the X button. It's mostly useless, but it comes in handy in projector levels. Like, use it when you're on a bouncy surface, and Mickey can reach greater heights, which is good for finding some of the hidden items in those levels. Finally, Mickey gets a dash ability for dodging enemy attacks just by pressing the B button. I honestly never found myself using either the ground pound or the dodge ability, since jumping feels like a much easier way to dodge enemies and attacks, and there's really no point in ground pounding enemies because the only way to defeat enemies is using ink or thinner, and so if anything, the best you can do is just use your brush attack, the spin attack, to knock them away, if anything, like if you're surrounded by a bunch of them and you need to stun them a little bit. Otherwise, I don't see any point in needing to use a ground pound. Also, there's a camera mode for moving a camera and taking in-game pictures. It's a neat feature, but I wish the game bothered telling me about it ahead of time, because I honestly didn't know this was a feature until I reached the final level. And for some stupid reason, it's in the options menu on the pause screen. Why is it hidden in the options menu? Wouldn't it make more sense to have it noticeable on the pause screen? Have like its own little section where you have like all these options at the top where you press L or R to shuffle between them. Why didn't they give photo mode its own little section instead of hiding it in the options menu? Who would think to look for a photo edit mode in the options menu? Not to mention, when I first started this game, I went to the options menu on the main menu, so obviously there's not going to be a camera mode on the main menu of the game. So yeah, I really wish they advertised this feature a lot better, because I would have loved to have used that throughout the game. There's also alternate outfits for Mickey to wear based on past Mickey Mouse cartoons. However, they are very underwhelming. Not only are they recycles from costumes that you could unlock in Epic Mickey 2, but there's only 5 of them, where Epic Mickey 2 had at least like 8 of them, if I'm not mistaken. So there's quite a few outfits missing in this one. And in Epic Mickey 2, these outfits had stat changes like enhancing Mickey's paint or ink capacity and firing range, or multiplying the spawn rate of collectible currency upon like destroying objects or defeating enemies and such. The outfits in Rebrushed have no enhancements, and not to mention 3 of the 5 outfits are locked behind DLC. There's a costume pack, and you can get it for free if you digitally pre-ordered the game. Otherwise, I think it's about $5 to get the costume pack. So, kind of a rip-off. The 2 costumes in the game that you can unlock regularly are Mickey's hat from the short Building a Building and Mickey's fire hat from Mickey's Fire Brigade. Now, these hats can be unlocked by collecting a certain number of film reels that are hidden within the projector levels, and you can give them to the usher at the movie theater in the hub area of Mean Street. So the DLC outfits include outfits from Steamboat Willie, the Brave Little Tailor, and Football Mickey from Touchdown Mickey. Overall, it's a huge downgrade from the costumes in Epic Mickey 2. It doesn't even have Sorcerer Mickey, which was the only costume in the sequel to resemble Mickey's modern design. It would have been nice to get a lot more outfits here. Like, we should have got, like I said, Sorcerer Mickey, but the band concert Mickey, or Prince and the Pauper Mickey, Runaway Brain, Evil Mickey. It's like, there's a lot of cool costumes they could have given us, and they just gave us 5 measly ones. Kind of underwhelming. The remake also includes the 2 unlockable classic cartoons that were featured in the first game, including the Oswald short Oh What a Night and Mickey's The Mad Doctor. Glad to see that they did not exclude these as bonus features for the remaster, even though I do own a copy of these shorts on the Walt Disney Treasures DVDs. I also wish that this game was an actual remake instead of a remaster. While they did redo some textures, 3D models, and lighting and shading effects, the characters still look very low poly like they did on the Wii. The eyes on so many of the characters look so off. I wish they made them look more round and less polygonic or triangular. It's just not easy to look at. The sound effects are worse as well. Like, some were flat out absent or were much quieter than they were in the original game. There are even visual effects that are flat out missing or half-assed in this remake. For instance, in the original game, whenever Mickey jumped through the projectors, you saw this really cool magical ripple effect. In Rebrushed, however, Mickey just clips through the projectors with no ripples, just these really weak paint bubbles that pop out. In the original game, when befriending the splatter enemies, they turn bright blue, indicating that they're now friendly. In Rebrushed, they turn dark blue, which is not very noticeable compared to their regular dark purple color scheme. So it makes it hard to tell if you've befriended some of these enemies or not. You've sprayed them with enough ink and you can't tell if they're converted or not because they still look pretty dark. I really wish it was remade to match the quality of the opening and ending cutscenes from this game. That would have been amazing. Like I said, it's a shame they didn't bother remaking it, but if they remade it to match those cutscenes, that would have been amazing. Unlike the sequel, the game does not use voice acting and instead uses the same gibberish mumbles and grunts on the characters from the original game. I honestly wish they went back and recorded new lines for the characters, but it would have required reanimating a lot of the cutscenes and reorchestrating the music to fit with the longer cutscenes. Since the painting-styled cutscenes have mouth movements that go way too fast and they do not match up with the dialogue, so it would be impossible to sync the voice lines to keep up with such speedy dialogue. The gameplay is overall the exact same as before, but with tweaked controls. The first level is a morbid version of Sleeping Beauty Castle, a dark and broken down version of the Magic Kingdom, complete with like the Dumbo ride and the Mad Hatter's Teacup ride. And we also have a morbid version of It's a Small World, flooded with thinner instead of water, and with the giant smiling clock tower as the towering boss fight. It's overall a fun introduction to the dark world that Mickey is going to be thrown into, with a lot of fun Easter eggs that die-hard Disney fans and historians will appreciate. But I think the Small World segment drags on way too long, with many slow moments of hopping across and riding on boats and stopping rotating gears to hop across platforms. The game does get pretty repetitive, which is a shame, because I love the concepts of all these levels. I just hate all the puzzle solving and slow platform riding you gotta do throughout the game, not to mention all the annoying fetch quests. I kind of wish it just revolved more on adventuring and maybe a little bit of combat, but so after that, we have no way of backtracking to the Magic Kingdom, which is kind of a shame for those who might want to revisit that level. But we are dumped into the main hub of Main Street, based on the main hub of Disneyland itself, Main Street. We then head to Oztown, which is a replica of Mickey's Toontown, where we meet an animatronic Goofy who is missing his body, and he gives us an optional quest to find Robot Goofy's parts and restore him. We also find robots of Daisy and Donald later on in the game with pretty much the same kind of fetch quests. Restoring them doesn't really do much. It's not very rewarding. It just gives you an alternate happier ending. And it just offers you an additional side quest that can give you a power spark. But power sparks are real easy to find in this game, especially if you saved up a lot of tickets. You can just buy them at the store in Main Street. So, beyond Oztown is one of the best areas in the game, Mickey Junk Mountain, where we meet Oswald towards the top of the mountain. But before meeting Oswald, we had to complete a test that requires going through 3 projectors themed after Oswald cartoons. After that, we head to Tomorrowland, where we start off on an area based on the defunct Disney World attraction, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, including a Nautilus submarine, which has a projector that leads to the next area, which is themed after the Carousel of Progress. The People Mover and other nods to the land are also in this game. So at the end of the level is a corrupted clone of Pete wearing an outfit inspired by the sci-fi movie Tron. So you can either defeat him or befriend him, just like every other boss in this game. This was one of my least favorite worlds in the game, but I really do love the boss fight at the end. The most annoying thing about this level is not knowing where to go next. I mean, you activate switches and free gremlins, but the game doesn't do the best job at explaining what any of these things bother doing to help you progress. There was a point where it told me to find an elevator to advance, and I was running laps around high and low, and I couldn't find a single elevator, only to find out the elevator was a stinking square platform in the center of the tallest area. Why was it not more stand out? It blended in too well with the level's already bland and repetitive aesthetic. Next is Adventureland, starting off with a land inspired by the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse. We meet Smee from Peter Pan, and he mentions how Robot Captain Hook has gone mad and started turning his own men into robots called Beetleworks, the Mad Doctor's mechanical weapons that cannot be defeated by thinner. So here we also meet Robot Daisy. Mickey explores many areas based on the ride of Pirates of the Caribbean, along with Skull Rock from Peter Pan. Once we confront Robot Hook, we can either defeat him by pushing around these rotatable puzzle things, or we can do a platforming challenge that requires repainting and erasing these sails that can help take us higher up. And once we get to the highest point of the ship, we can free a sprite that belongs to Pete Pan, which is a variant of Pete dressed like Peter Pan, which leads to Pete Pan sword fighting with Hook as he urges you to go on ahead with your journey. Now, when I first played this game, I had no idea you'd get a cutscene where Pete Pan fought Hook. I only went down the path that required defeating Hook, which is apparently the dark way of handling the fight. And being able to summon Pete Pan is actually the heroic ending of this fight. I can't believe I missed out on such a hilarious cutscene. That was a good payoff for doing the heroic mission. So it is a much more rewarding payoff than just seeing Hook get chased off by a robot version of the crocodile. So the theming of this level is really cool, but it was one level I got stuck on the most, with too many fetch quests and hidden items scattered throughout which are needed to progress. So it is a real drag to get through. Finally, we have Bog Easy, based on a mixture of New Orleans Square, the Mickey Mouse short The Lonesome Ghost, and the Haunted Mansion. Here we meet Robot Donald Duck in an area inspired by the hub of New Orleans Square. So most of the level is just themed after the Haunted Mansion, complete with the stretching room and all that, which involves a puzzle that requires rising tiles and spinning them around until they match a necessary image. We also find a parody of Madame Leota called Madame Leona, who helps us on her quest, but only if we help her first. The boss of this area is the worst boss fight in the game, and it was the part I got stuck on the worst. And so, the Mad Doctor boss fight, it's less of a boss fight and more of an endless wave of enemies that requires shutting down these generators to prevent the Beetleworks from being made. So I was able to skip 2/3 of the fight because in the previous areas, I found these 2 hidden gremlins, And they managed to repay me by destroying 2 of the 3 generators once I reached the boss fight. So the biggest problem I have is that it doesn't do a very good job at showing you where these generators are, nor how to take them down. So I ran around every inch of this level, high and low, multiple times, spraying thinner on everything I could find, and nothing happened. And considering how this is the 3rd time I've ever played through this game, and I still couldn't remember what to do here, geesh. All I had to do was run to the center of the opposite end of the room, defeat a beetleworks that resembles the witch from Snow White with a poison apple body. Upon defeating it, a door will briefly open with the generator on the other side as it creates another beetleworks. So you have to quickly shoot this giant red eye with thinner on the machine before the door shuts. I hate how I wasted half an hour running laps around this damn place. This boss really drags on, and it really drags down what is otherwise a pretty decent level. Other than that, I'd still say that the Haunted Mansion or Bog Easy is one of the better levels in this game, but that boss fight is just terrible. Also, upon defeating the Mad Doctor, it's revealed that he turned himself into a Beetleworks because he knows that Beetleworks are the only things that can survive thinner, and he flees, not to be seen again until the sequel. After that, all the levels have been explored at least once, and we do a bunch of backtracking which leads to the final boss. Now overall, Disney Epic Mickey Rebrushed is the definitive way to play this game, with very improved controls and frame rate, but at the cost of ridiculous loading screens and occasional performance hiccups, but nothing as bad as the first game's lack of performance. Now this was remastered by Purple Lantern, the same team that remade SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, and they mostly did a pretty good job at faithfully bringing this game to modern consoles. But I wish they did a little more to improve and enhance the game, like more upgrades, abilities, levels, and rewards. Otherwise, I had more fun with this remaster compared to my first 2 times playing it on the Wii. Maybe it was because I was more used to this game by now, and I did a better job at finding stuff that I couldn't find before. For instance, in my original runs of the game, I was never able to save the robots of Mickey's friends. I just couldn't find all the parts. But in the Rebrushed version, I was able to somehow find them without needing any guides for them. I was just more alert in this game, I bothered doing more exploration. So yeah, I was able to find them all this time. So I really do think it's more than just experience from past replays, though. I really do think the improved controls and frame rate really help make this a much better experience. I do recommend the game for those who absolutely love the first game and don't mind buying the game again to play on modern consoles with better controls. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it's a must-get. The price really does not really warrant the minor tweaks it got. Like, I feel like this should have been a $30 or $40 game instead of a $60 game. The game might be too hard for younger kids to figure out. Like, they will easily get lost in this game and not know what to do next. But it's got a lot of fun obscure Easter eggs for the biggest and oldest Disney fans. I really hope this game does well and not only encourages Disney to do a remaster of Epic Mickey 2, but hopefully it can lead to them reviving the scrapped Epic Donald spin-off along with the canceled Epic Mickey 3. I give Disney Epic Mickey Rebrushed an 8 out of 10. That's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching, see you next time, and have a great day.